The entire professional tennis world was completely taken aback by Alex Eala. The globe and the internet are still buzzing with relentless energy. People have not stopped talking ever since. A massive scandal worth billions of dollars suddenly exploded across the internet. This massive controversy dragged in famous celebrities, wealthy billionaires, and countless millions. Millions of devoted admirers were caught in the crossfire. Suddenly, the most discussed name in the world of women's tennis was no longer just about the competitive events taking place on the court. The conversation entirely shifted to the bizarre digital rumors trying to drag her down off of it. The stark reality of this strange situation unfolds exactly as follows. The actual truth is far more dramatic than any fabricated lie could ever be. Once the digital smoke finally cleared, what came to light was truly shocking. It was significantly more than simply a passing controversy. It served as a stark warning, holding a harsh mirror up to the chaotic realm of modern celebrity and social media. It exposed the gloomy digital apparatus that ruthlessly thrives on the rapid growth of a public symbol. Here is the entire unbelievable tale. Furthermore, you might mistakenly believe you already know the facts. If you think you already understand it, you absolutely do not. You need proper context to comprehend why a billion-dollar scandal bearing Alex Eala's name could happen. To understand how she could completely upend the internet, you must first comprehend who Alex truly is. You must deeply understand Eala's true identity and what her massive success represents to an entire nation. She means absolutely everything to a whole country. Born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City in the Philippines, Alexandra Maniego Eala is simply not like other regular athletes. She is a certified tennis whiz and an absolute global sensation. She is the rare kind of athlete who comes along to define a whole generation, and not just for her home nation. She is redefining the actual sport of tennis itself. By the time she reached the young age of 20, she had already accomplished monumental tasks that no other Filipino tennis player had ever done. She achieved historic milestones that nobody had previously done. She spectacularly transformed into the very first Grand Slam winner from the Philippines when she conquered the Junior Singles Championship. She secured this legacy by winning the girls' singles title at the United States Open in 2022. Meanwhile, the rest of the professional tennis community observed her rapid rise with absolute awe. Looking on with astonished wide eyes, they watched her become the first Filipino to ever reach the top 100 of the Women's Tennis Association. She was the very first to overcome many top-tier obstacles. She boldly defeated elite top 5 athletes competing at the highest tour level. She was also the first to advance to a prestigious association semi-final, and that all happened before the year 2026 even arrived. When that year finally rolled around, she proudly arrived at a world number 31 ranking. This was a monumental career-high ranking, standing as the highest for any Filipino player ever in the entire history of the sport. That is a phenomenal achievement in professional tennis. However, this magical feeling is exactly what the raw statistics are completely unable to convey. This intangible quality is exactly what distinguishes Alex Eala from all the other players. She outshines every emerging star on the professional women's circuit today. That is absolutely correct. Right now, her profound impact goes far beyond the mere victories. It is about much more than just the numerical ranks. It is deeply connected to the energy of the populace. Whether in Abu Dhabi or elsewhere, whenever Alex Eala performs, massive stadiums in Miami, Dubai, and Guadalajara completely fill up. They do not sell out just because of basic marketing. It is not driven by the tournament's aggressively loud marketing campaigns. It is also not because the Tennis Association forces her onto the largest court every single time. The fiercely loyal Filipino fans are the true driving force. These passionate supporters are the main reason those massive arenas completely fill up. They follow her every move as closely as a vital heartbeat sustains a living body. They go on long international trips just for her. They remain wide awake until 1 in the morning in completely foreign cities. They eagerly purchase expensive tickets to far-off places they have never even visited before. They passionately applaud through joyful tears while shouting in mixed native languages. One deeply moved admirer and frequent internet commenter summed up the phenomenon quite precisely. Without a single shadow of a doubt, Alex Eala is currently the most heavily renowned player of our time. She is the most compelling tennis player in this exact moment. She overshadows other massive names, even surpassing rising stars like Coco Gauff. Even when she lost a tough match at the Miami Open, she still bounced back and triumphed over Madison Keys. Her victory over Madison Keys was truly spectacular. She single-handedly carried the entire nation of the Philippines directly into elite global discussions about professional tennis. The sport's exclusive inner circle did not meaningfully include the Philippines previously. Additionally, the immense pressure was visible when she emotionally left the court in Dubai in February of 2026. It followed a deeply passionate outburst that unfortunately resulted in a heartbreaking loss. After suffering that bitter loss against Jasmine Paolini, she refused to make any excuses. Before ultimately falling short, she did not complain to anyone, and she never failed to gracefully deflect the harsh negativity. She later posted her raw thoughts on Instagram. She posted that fighting incredibly hard for 3 grueling weeks with immense pride and deep love had finally ended. She cited her unique experience as an individual Philippine-born athlete playing on the world stage. She noted how heavy the burden truly is. She spoke beautifully about the profound honor of performing in front of those who vividly see themselves reflected in you. Yet, directly at the turbulent heart of this chaotic digital maelstrom stood a young lady. She rose far too brightly and entirely too quickly in this unforgiving era of modern social media. The harsh reality is that you do not simply attract loyal fans, but you also attract something far darker. This was exactly Alex Eala's precarious situation at the very beginning of the year 2026, where she became an unexpected online phenomenon. You must remain with us, because this next phase is where the story gets truly chaotic. The following sequence of events is where things take a remarkably crazy turn. Picture yourself waking up one seemingly normal morning and suddenly discovering your own name plastered across the internet. Imagine finding yourself inextricably connected to one of the most bizarre financial tales ever attached to a public sports figure. We are not talking about $50 million, nor are we talking about a mere $10 million. We are talking about an astronomical sum, specifically $1.6 billion. That mind-boggling scenario is precisely what Alex Eala intensely experienced during the frantic month of February in 2026. It all started when 3 or more distinct Facebook postings began aggressively spreading a completely unbelievable tale. It was a story so intensely dramatic that it felt like it was pulled straight from a ludicrously funny movie script. Millions of ordinary people in the Philippines and everywhere else completely stopped their scrolling to read it. They eagerly began sharing the wild assertion that a highly influential billionaire had made a monumental offer. The rumor claimed this powerful figure from Abu Dhabi was Sheikh Mansour bin Zayed Al Nahyan, known as one of the richest men in the entire world. As the famed founder of the Manchester City Football Club, his name carried massive weight. The deeply fabricated story insisted that this billionaire personally offered Alex Eala an exclusive club deal worth an unbelievable $6 billion. The widely circulated posts claimed the alleged terms were highly unusual but incredibly lucrative. The outrageous rumor detailed a payment structure involving an instant $1 billion down payment, followed by hundreds of millions annually for 10 straight years. In return, she allegedly had to accept a permanent move to Abu Dhabi. She was supposedly expected to assume the prestigious role of queen for a recently launched sporting competition. This heavily rumored tournament was widely referred to online as the Abu Dhabi Diamond Tennis Championship. The sensational posts immediately went viral across the entire digital landscape. They were rapidly shared thousands upon thousands of times in a matter of hours. They easily gathered tens of thousands of enthusiastic likes from gullible readers. The endless comment sections completely exploded with overwhelming waves of joyous congratulations. Her deeply passionate supporters were profoundly moved by the incredible news. A few devoted followers were even brought to tears of immense pride. These were dedicated individuals who had faithfully watched every single game that Eala had ever played. They had tracked every grueling ranking step and tearfully celebrated each arduous triumph, feeling they were witnessing a miracle. They truly had the distinct impression that they were seeing legendary sports history unfold once more. Their beloved national idol, who they viewed as their own daughter, was seemingly being acknowledged by one of the most influential persons alive. They believed she was securing a life-changing deal that easily surpassed almost anything in the entire history of professional athletics. However, there was just one massive, undeniable issue with this heartwarming narrative. It was completely and utterly untrue. Every single word of the viral story was an absolute fabrication. The dedicated fact-checking group, known as Verifiles, immediately looked into the matter and discovered absolutely no documentation of such a miraculous event. They found no proof whatsoever of any secret meeting occurring between Sheikh Mansour and Eala. Furthermore, there was absolutely no official statement ever released from Eala's actual management camp. The Women's Tennis Association remained completely silent. There was zero confirmation from any reliable news organization anywhere in the entire globe. The undeniable truth was that the whole extraordinary narrative was simply made up out of thin air to generate cheap internet traffic. It was maliciously created and carefully constructed using just a standard stock picture placed next to a massive number. They attached a name big enough to actively stimulate the wild imagination of the crazed public. Furthermore, this astonishing incident was not even the first time she had been violently targeted by fake news. At around that very same time, another completely baseless article began aggressively circulating online. That specific post received over 13,000 emotional responses and more than 200 lengthy remarks. It falsely claimed that Eala had officially signed a massive $45 million endorsement agreement with Wilson Sporting Goods. That widely believed rumor was also entirely untrue from start to finish. Verifiles quickly refuted the claim, and the news outlet Rappler officially attested that she actually stayed exclusively under her existing Babolat contract. The elaborate lie even claimed that Wilson had specially etched a custom racket with the majestic phrase "Philippine icon" only for her. None of that was true in the slightest. Then came the equally ridiculous rumors about Emirates Airlines. She was allegedly signed to a massive airline sponsorship out of nowhere. Then, another bizarre rumor rapidly spread, claiming she made a multi-million-dollar charitable donation to Quezon City's struggling homeless population. The post claimed she did this immediately after her stunning victory in the Eastbourne Open. It was entirely manufactured nonsense. The deception grew worse when an entirely artificial intelligence-produced picture surfaced online showing her giving a man a warm hug. The fake image claimed she was embracing a guy called Marco, purportedly a tragic cancer sufferer who selflessly sold his only motorbike just to see her perform. That highly manipulative post went really popular very quickly. The heartwarming pictures were entirely phony, and the deeply devoted fans simply did not exist. Furthermore, and perhaps most crucially, whoever recklessly caused these viral sensations failed to notice some glaringly obvious specific details. Despite famously being a highly dominant left-handed player, the artificial intelligence pictures completely failed to capture reality. The generated images incorrectly depicted Alex Eala clumsily signing a tennis autograph with her right hand. This malicious misinformation device had been silently operating in the background for some agonizingly long months. Just now, it had finally created its most violently explosive and globally disruptive fictional product yet. The automated digital device had been operating in the shadows for some agonizingly long months, slowly refining its deceptive craft. Just now, it had finally managed to create its absolute most violently explosive and globally disruptive fictional product to date. However, the ultimate breaking point had not yet fully arrived. A massive, completely fabricated $1 billion scandal was violently attached to an innocent 20-year-old dedicated athlete who was simply attempting to quietly excel. She was merely trying to engage in professional tennis and win so she could genuinely make her beloved nation profoundly proud. But how exactly did her pure intentions end up twisting this horrific way? And who truly was the real hidden culprit? This highly coordinated digital attack was absolutely not a random coincidence. This was clearly not a mere one-time childish stunt, carelessly orchestrated by a bored, disinterested adolescent looking for temporary amusement. What had been aggressively pursuing Alex Eala for several agonizing months was something vastly much more structured and intensely deliberate. It was far more meticulously thoughtful and infinitely more financially lucrative than the vast majority of people were even remotely aware. The investigative journalists at Rappler, as well as the digital forensics team at the Nerve, had been quietly following this suspicious activity for quite a while. The stunning discovery they eventually made was a highly computed, entirely artificial content network. This shadowy operation was essentially an assortment of several interconnected Facebook sites, all heavily wrapped in a completely fake tennis theme. They cunningly used innocent-sounding titles such as Flow Tennis and Tennis Mood to easily deceive the unsuspecting public. These malicious pages had strategically amassed enormous, highly active fan bases over time, but they did not do this by giving legitimately accurate tennis news. Instead, they succeeded solely by ruthlessly creating emotionally poignant narratives directly targeting one person. They deliberately crafted these wildly dramatic fictions specifically and entirely about Alex Eala. The manipulative mathematical equation they employed was terrifyingly exact and coldly precise in its absolute execution. First, they had to successfully create a massively captive viewership composed of deeply sincere tennis enthusiasts. They specifically targeted incredibly passionate Filipino fans who were desperately eager to learn more about their new national idol. Then, they deliberately posted entirely fabricated tales, heavily intended to violently evoke incredibly strong human feelings. They expertly weaponized online involvement by mixing deeply touching stories with extreme indignation, throwing in fake contract bait and fantasy-level declarations. These meticulously engineered postings predictably managed to produce hundreds of outraged responses and thousands of heavily engaged remarks. They quickly generated a massive lot of viral shares, and then, ultimately, this is where the massive digital cash flowed in. All of that emotionally charged digital involvement is smoothly directed to other external websites heavily dotted with highly profitable commercial advertisements. The brutal digital reality is simple and greedy, because the more clicks they generate, the more illicit money they ruthlessly collect. This shady scheme silently generates thousands of pesos per individual item, seamlessly scaling up to potentially millions based purely on the sheer amount of sustained traffic over time. Something profoundly, deeply cynical was completely understood here. A terribly caustic and quite tragically accurate psychological truth regarding the internet in 2026 was perfectly grasped by these unseen scammers. The simple fact is that ordinary individuals simply do not always bother to confirm basic facts before widely sharing. This reckless sharing happens particularly fast when ordinary users are deeply emotionally moved by the underlying fabricated narrative. The scammers perfectly weaponized powerful feelings involving extreme outrage, immense national pride, and pure, unadulterated delight. The completely absurd billion-dollar deal narrative perfectly set off the absolute purest possible manifestation of deep national pride. It weaponized the beautiful notion that a humbly raised, Quezon City-based Filipino girl had finally conquered the elite global stage. The heart of the lie was that this girl from the bustling city had become so remarkably strong and so deeply internationally acknowledged. The fantasy proudly proclaimed that among the wealthiest, most powerful men alive, someone was completely prepared to spend massive fortunes on her. The lie insisted he was willing to spend more money globally than the vast majority of developing countries actually make annually, purely because he deeply desired to have her proudly stand in to officially represent his elite city. This utterly ridiculous digital fantasy was heavily intended by its creators to be taken completely seriously by the public, and tragically, it worked flawlessly. Consequently, the unpredictable collateral harm inflicted across the real world was truly incredibly huge and deeply damaging. Actual, highly respected public figures inadvertently received unfairly pulled directly into this massive, completely uncontrolled digital vortex. The deeply respected veteran news anchor from the mighty GMA network, Mel Tianco, suddenly found herself horribly entangled. The legendary anchor had to physically appear on 24 Horas on national television, one of the absolute most heavily viewed evening newscasts in the entire Philippines. She was forced to openly refute vicious claims that she had cruelly made fun of Alex Eala. The completely phony viral post viciously said Tianco had cruelly referred to Eala as a fundamentally vile and deeply self-centered individual. It falsely said that Eala had then supposedly answered back incredibly severely and highly emotionally. Absolutely nothing of that fabricated sort had ever actually occurred in any reality. Tianco was incredibly measured, completely professional, and entirely straightforward in her necessary public denial. She is heavily valued by millions of everyday Filipinos. She is highly deserving of that immense public respect, and vastly more. The digital argument then rapidly morphed into deeply serious inquiries regarding actual athletic endorsements, touching upon deeply structural industry prejudice. The passionate debate forcefully examined how massive Western corporate companies typically talk to rising Asian players. Fans fiercely questioned the harsh reasons why Eala's spectacular breakthrough year, featuring incredible victories defeating top players like Iga Swiatek and Madison Keys, was ignored. They angrily wondered why her historic and completely unprecedented semi-final run in a top-tier Women's Tennis Association 1000 event, along with a spectacular rating that was a massive career high, had completely failed to yield proper results. They questioned why her incredible, undeniable success had not successfully converted into the exact kind of massive headline, worldwide sponsorships that any similar Western athletes would have automatically been instantly drawn to right now. In the tense meanwhile, the heavily scrutinized Professional Tennis Association was also heavily under massive public criticism from an entirely different angle. The powerful organizers of the massive elite tennis event in Dubai had deliberately chosen a highly controversial time slot. That deeply questionable scheduling decision caused a massive secondary controversy entirely of its own making. They inexplicably decided on putting Coco Gauff's highly anticipated quarterfinal matchup against Eala as merely the opening first game of the evening. They completely relegated it to the early evening session, instead of making it the grand main event that usually closes the night. For the completely uninformed casual spectator, this minor scheduling detail might seem entirely insignificant. However, to absolutely everyone who truly recognized the massive global scope of Eala's dedicated supporters, it was a shockingly serious error in judgment. The deeply loyal Filipino supporters were understandably outraged by this blatant oversight. This careless decision literally required the entire nation of the Philippines to force themselves to remain awake until 1 in the morning just to observe her highly anticipated match. Additionally, the sheer disrespect shown to her massive audience was baffling. With Eala rapidly emerging as perhaps the absolute largest individual viewing draw on the entire professional women's tour, this poor decision left many deeply confused. Countless people began seriously wondering why the governing body was failing so miserably. The powerful organization officially in charge of aggressively encouraging and heavily promoting global tennis for women was seemingly failing at its most basic job. They were completely failing to properly make use of their absolute most thrilling new youthful celebrity. Major international tennis publications officially mentioned this glaring scheduling mistake publicly in their heavily read columns. Respected journalists noted that the elite professional circuit, as well as the prominent local event organizers in Dubai, were dropping the ball. One prominent media outlet explicitly stated that these powerful tournament organizers certainly do not always have an easy job balancing demanding schedules. However, they strongly argued that if their ultimate goal is to properly maximize Eala's rapidly increasing popularity, changes must happen. The sports journalists firmly insisted that they are simply unable to continue making these massive strategic errors without severely damaging the sport. That exact harsh criticism was strongly and repeatedly echoed in thousands of angry comments online. Digital fan areas and massively crowded internet forums completely erupted with deeply frustrated supporters. These fans were already heavily irritated by the exact same outdated institutional systems supposedly designed to improve the global reach of women's professional sports. They felt the sport was deliberately creating unnecessary artificial barriers, blocking the magnificent sight of its absolute brightest new rising stars. It rapidly devolved into a completely chaotic internet storm of unprecedented proportions. A massive digital door had been violently ripped open by a completely fabricated billion-dollar falsehood. Once that Pandora's box finally opened, countless years of deep annoyance, intense national pride, genuine affection, and completely rightful complaints all exploded simultaneously. These wildly intense emotions all forcefully circled one another, violently crashing directly into Alex Eala's personal space in the middle of a massive digital storm. However, despite dealing with all of the deafening cacophony and the relentless online deception, she remained perfectly steady. Amidst all the exhausting public dispute and the endless fabricated rumors, she finally stepped forward and said something directly to the world. Additionally, the absolute sheer class of exactly what she stated completely altered everything about the chaotic narrative. It genuinely would have been incredibly simple for Alex Eala to become highly upset and visibly angry at the relentless digital abuse. She easily could have chosen to make a fiercely defensive public declaration directly through her professional sports administration team. She had every right to publish something highly aggressive to finally give the malicious gossip pages a brutal, well-deserved public clapback. She was facing completely outrageous falsehoods being widely spread about her private life and her personal financial deals. The indisputable fact is that a vast lot of other highly competitive professional athletes would have absolutely reacted with pure burning rage. Many prominent athletes have historically done exactly that when faced with such massive pressure following a crushing high-profile defeat. This chaos heavily intensified following her deeply disappointing departure from the Women's Open, where she tragically lost a tough battle to a fierce competitor from Colombia in the quarterfinals. After Camila Osorio unfortunately left the deeply devoted Manila audience completely heartbroken, Eala made her move. Instead of loudly complaining, Eala silently strolled directly back to work on a quiet practice court alongside Joan Bosch, her deeply trusted professional coach. They immediately got back to focusing entirely on the technical athletic matters that desperately needed urgent repair. She absolutely refused to hold a dramatic news outlet conference filled with bitter personal complaints. She also deliberately chose not to aggressively hammer out a viral social media post that was completely brimming with unhinged toxic passion. Instead of feeding the ugly drama, she simply returned directly to her grueling daily job of mastering her chosen craft. Additionally, when she finally did politely confront the massive waves of false digital information, her public statements were incredibly calm and remarkably measured. She spoke in a deeply quiet, highly respectful manner that made her absolute sincerity devastatingly obvious to anyone truly listening. She plainly stated that she truly has absolutely no personal control over what the chaotic internet ultimately decides to invent. She calmly explained that she has zero power over what random manipulative individuals maliciously choose to publish on their unregulated digital platforms. She respectfully acknowledged that she is fully aware that there have been several massive viral pieces of completely false news. She thoughtfully admitted that it is genuinely worrisome, as she sometimes is forced to see these fabricated lies get a massive, large number of enthusiastic likes. She correctly pointed out that it is highly challenging for regular people to accurately recognize the subtle differences between fact and pure fiction. She gracefully noted how difficult the digital landscape is when you may simply see a highly convincing fake headline suddenly pop up on the internet. She mentioned she is well versed in how completely innocent people may sometimes easily get entirely misguided by these incredibly clever modern deceptions. She paused and slightly hesitated for a brief moment, and then she spoke again, completely without any trace of bitter resentment or flashy showmanship. She humbly provided the absolute only sincere piece of public guidance she genuinely believed she could effectively provide to her deeply loving fans. She gently suggested that, in her own humble personal opinion, her devoted supporters should simply try to look out for highly trustworthy professional news sources. She politely urged them to try their absolute hardest to only pay close attention to the most reliable and thoroughly verified media outlets. She finished her brief, incredibly classy statement by humbly declaring that is absolutely all she can really say about the chaotic situation. She noted that she simply has absolutely nothing else to add to the completely fabricated drama. She expertly diffused a massive global controversy using only a handful of perfectly chosen phrases. However, those incredibly simple spoken words carried the massively heavy burden of someone who had been violently forced to watch a completely bizarre parallel version of herself. For several agonizing months, she was forced to watch a totally fake artificial version of herself be ruthlessly created and aggressively marketed directly on the internet. This completely fictional version was falsely signing massive billion-dollar mega-deal contracts that simply never even existed in reality. This fake version supposedly disparaged highly seasoned, respected reporters, miraculously accepted massive charitable donations from wealthy international individuals, and completely lived a total lie. She deliberately decided to continue quietly playing her beloved sport of tennis instead of foolishly battling the vast internet. She also addressed something much more profound, something deeply meaningful that completely elevated her far above the petty drama of the whole scandalous affair. She humbly explained that she tries her absolute hardest every single day because she is keenly aware that, particularly on the massive global scene, she represents a very large and proud demographic. She warmly expressed that it is truly a massive privilege to possess such a wonderfully dedicated community, and she deeply appreciates how this immense support system continues to firmly come together for her. Here was a remarkable 20-year-old lady, officially ranked 31st in the entire world, standing tall as the absolute highest-ranking Filipino in the long history of the sport. She was effortlessly carrying the heavy, unspoken hopes of over 100 million people, and she was somehow managing to do it all with breathtaking grace. This quiet dignity instantly caused the roaring false news machine to appear incredibly tiny and utterly pathetic in stark contrast. The actual, verifiable details concerning her true professional business situation were finally revealed, clearly establishing their own compelling narrative. By February of the year 2026, the total amount of Eala's legitimate career prize money was hovering right around $1.49 million. This was an incredibly important financial milestone for her upward career trajectory and her young age, but it was absolutely nowhere close to the ludicrous, multi-billion-dollar fantasy figures being aggressively produced on the internet. Her actual, officially verified corporate sponsors proudly included major international heavyweights like Babolat, Nike, Globe Telecom, and the prestigious Bank of the Philippine Islands. Furthermore, her team had recently secured fantastic local partnerships with brands like Juice. These were entirely sincere, highly professional business collaborations firmly based on her actual, undeniable athletic success and a foundation of genuine mutual trust. They were not built upon ridiculous, completely fabricated billion-dollar fakes or viral digital lies. They absolutely were not based on bizarre internet mythology clumsily produced by artificial intelligence, but rather they were real, tangible bargains forged with actual individuals who had a genuine, deeply rooted belief in the athlete. These legitimate corporate partners fiercely believed in her and her actual, hard-fought accomplishments on the court. Her undeniable real-world successes easily made each and every fictitious internet number seem completely superficial, especially after she spectacularly defeated heavyweights like Iga Swiatek. She bravely earned a highly coveted wildcard entry and fought her way into a prestigious 1,000-level tournament semifinal, brilliantly winning the tough Guadalajara 125 event. She also began successfully making her mark at legendary venues like the French Open, Wimbledon, and the United States Open. In the process, she completely shattered historical ceilings by becoming the very first person from the proud nation of the Philippines to successfully win a highly contested match during a Grand Slam in the modern Open era. She relentlessly pushed forward, incredibly reaching a world ranking of number 31, marking a spectacular, undisputed career high. These were the only massive numbers and glorious billions that truly counted in her remarkable true story. Her true wealth was absolutely not measured in fake money, but rather in dedicated time, and not in fictional agreements, but in overcoming the difficult past. This vital realization perfectly leads us directly to the absolute most important overarching question of this entire digital saga. What does all of this overwhelming digital chaos truly mean for her, for the beloved sport of tennis, and for an overly eager world that absolutely never stops trying to inaccurately characterize her? There is a highly specific, incredibly heavy kind of celebrity pressure that only occurs for phenomenally gifted players who suddenly become massive cultural emblems. They magically transform into towering symbols of hope long before they have even fully completed showing up as fully developed professional players. The legendary Muhammad Ali undoubtedly experienced it, and the incredibly powerful Serena Williams absolutely faced it throughout her historic career. It is a profoundly heavy burden currently being carried by the brilliant Naomi Osaka. Now, in the fast-paced year of 2026, that exact same monumental weight is also being bravely carried by Alex Eala. She faces the immense, crushing burden of being viewed as vastly more than simply a regular tennis player participating in a sporting movement. She is definitely not only a highly skilled athlete, but she has become a shining, reflective mirror where an entire hopeful country eagerly views its own limitless potential in return. The undeniable truth is that the utterly ridiculous billion-dollar scandal and the suffocating deluge of toxic false information surrounding it were absolutely not isolated incidents. They were glaring, flashing warning signs for all of us. They were the deeply troubling signs and very clear symptoms of a highly broken modern social media ecosystem that ruthlessly prioritizes cheap, fleeting emotion directly above hard, verifiable reality. They were also the dark symptoms of a massive, multi-billion-dollar global sports industry that has somehow tragically failed to establish sufficient protective infrastructure. The broken system completely failed to adequately safeguard its absolute brightest emerging young talents from being viciously exploited online. Additionally, these massive digital controversies were glaring signs of something vastly older and deeply embedded within our human psychology. They exposed humanity's fatal propensity to wildly exaggerate the mythical status of those we deeply admire. We selfishly rush to turn them into living legends before they have even gotten the fair opportunity to simply fall in love with their craft and just be genuinely fantastic entirely on their own personal terms. Because of this completely unchecked digital frenzy, there is always a terrible, looming risk of her undeniable, authentic brilliance being completely drowned out by the deafening online loudness. Alex Eala is already a phenomenally fantastic, truly awe-inspiring athlete in her own rightful domain. She absolutely does not need a fake, artificially generated contract for $1 billion to be incredibly entertaining and completely captivating to watch on the global stage. She is completely not in need of bizarre, emotionally manipulative, artificial intelligence-generated narratives about supposed meetings with mythical billionaires or tragic cancer patients, just to be viewed as a deeply motivating figure. She fiercely stepped onto the court and spectacularly surpassed the seemingly impossible world records all by herself. An entire, deeply passionate country completely fell head over heels in love with her, fiercely embracing a sport that they hardly even knew existed at this elite, highly competitive level. She triumphantly appeared in completely foreign city courts that she had never even visited before, and she miraculously filled them to the absolute brim. She eagerly met countless individuals who had willingly traveled hundreds of miles only to passionately support her powerful name. The highly debated professional tennis scheduling in Dubai became a massive issue. This scheduling dispute completely revealed its own deeply uneasy tale about how massive sporting institutions may rapidly fall behind their very own rising stars. This becomes glaringly obvious when the absolute most well-liked individual is treated poorly. The wildly popular player must inexplicably start the night early on the tour session rather than rightfully ending it as the grand finale. It is baffling when her completely devoted fans are advised to simply remain awake until 1 o'clock. They are forced to stay up into the early morning hours just to witness her spectacular athletic performance. There is a deeply systemic problem embedded within the very equipment and structure supposedly used to elevate the sport. It is perhaps not done malevolently. It is likely not done intentionally, but rather entirely structurally, and it absolutely must be actively dealt with because the meteoric growth of Alex Eala is certainly not slowing down anytime soon. She is only a highly driven 20 years of age. At merely 20 years old, she is remarkably rated number 31 on the entire planet, and she is rapidly rising at a breathtaking rate. It is a trajectory that even the absolute most bullish early forecasts completely failed to accurately anticipate. This unprecedented rise changes absolutely everything about the competitive landscape. Following a highly difficult defeat against Coco Gauff in Dubai, culminating in an unbalanced 0-6 and 2-6 score, Eala recognized the tough loss with her typical brand of grace. She spoke with absolute, unwavering honesty and pure class. She did not attempt to cowardly conceal herself from the harsh reality of the final outcome. She boldly stated that she firmly believed the competitive distance between them was rather significant. She noted that the massive gap in experience was highly noticeable, directly stating this insightful observation during her candid interview immediately after the grueling game. She humbly added that she is still so incredibly far away from properly matching these elite professionals. She respectfully acknowledged the profound greatness of those veteran champion athletes. She remarkably did not speak with the bitter, deflating tone of a thoroughly defeated individual. Instead, she spoke with the laser-focused attention of a true competitor. She had entirely determined precisely what massive amount of rigorous work is required and what absolutely must be diligently completed moving forward. Then, she beautifully made a highly thoughtful post on her official Instagram account that was absolutely not a bitter grievance. It was completely devoid of any cheap, defensive justification, but rather featured a deeply moving quotation emphasizing the profound, unmatched privilege of performing. It celebrated the deep honor of playing in front of passionate onlookers who vividly see themselves directly inside you. Suddenly, the entire chaotic narrative rightfully went directly back to exactly where it always fundamentally comes back to in the end. It beautifully returned to the pure love of Alex Eala, highlighting her incredible honor and deep, unwavering life purpose. Meanwhile, the totally phony $8 billion lie faded. The utterly ridiculous fake deal violently erupted across the entire internet landscape, but then it very quickly burnt itself entirely out within mere days. However, Alex Eala's profoundly true nature continued brilliantly constructing solid, indisputable ranking success. She methodically earned massive ranking points, grueling match by grueling match, fiercely battling across three entirely different major global continents. She accomplished all of this incredible work while an entire, deeply proud country eagerly observes from their homes. She is absolutely not going anywhere but steadily upward toward the very top, proving that the Professional Sports Association was largely unsurprised by the massive digital controversy. The shocking internet scandal ultimately made the governing body keenly aware of something. It forced them to finally acknowledge what they fundamentally already knew deep down, but had previously completely failed to give any serious, meaningful thought. Alex Eala is absolutely not in any desperate need of completely fake, highly manipulated digital narratives. The true, powerful narrative is entirely about her actual journey. The genuinely incredible story is purely about her authentic, undeniable self. Each and every single time she fiercely steps out onto the competitive court, the entire captivating tale effortlessly revolves completely around her undeniable talent. Additionally, the chaotic modern internet in all of its wild glory remains a massive factor. Despite all of its pure, unbridled anarchy, brilliant, unexpected inventiveness, and sometimes incredibly brutal harshness, the digital world is completely unavoidable. Yet, it ultimately served only to strongly validate what truly dedicated, lifelong tennis fans were already profoundly aware of all along. She is undeniably present, powerfully occupying the global stage with absolute authority. She is entirely, refreshingly genuine in a highly artificial, completely manufactured digital age. Additionally, the absolute most terrifying realization for her fierce global competitors is that she is truly just getting started. Thus, this is a highly worthwhile topic to explore. It is an incredibly profound, deeply vital question to actively post down in the lively comments sections later tonight. We currently live in a heavily distorted modern world where completely phony, multi-billion-dollar corporate contracts violently spread as absolute truth. They inexplicably spread vastly more quickly and aggressively when compared to actual, historically significant Grand Slam tournament wins. What exactly does this deeply troubling reality ultimately indicate about our heavily skewed societal values regarding young, vulnerable athletes? Additionally, we must constantly ask ourselves a critical question. Is this massive, highly profitable global sports system truly designed to properly safeguard up-and-coming, uniquely gifted young talent exactly like Alex Eala? Or, conversely, is this massive, unfeeling, multi-billion-dollar machine fundamentally designed to ruthlessly take complete advantage of them at every turn? Are they merely pawns in a much larger, highly cynical financial game? The indisputable reality is that Alex simply did not ever agree to a completely fabricated, ridiculous billion-dollar contract. She completely did not have to resort to such utterly cheap, deceptive digital trickery. What she deeply, genuinely agreed to each and every grueling game was far more powerful. The incredible physical and mental effort she has consistently displayed is something infinitely far more eternally tying than mere cash. It is a profoundly beautiful, deeply unbreakable pledge to a whole, fiercely proud country. She powerfully proved that someone from the developing nation of the Philippines is absolutely able to achieve ultimate greatness. She boldly proved they can proudly stand tall on the absolute largest, most highly intimidating global courts on earth. They are not merely there just to quietly compete, but to undeniably, emphatically belong right at the absolute pinnacle of the elite sport. The entire chaotic internet and its toxic false news rapidly blew up in a massive digital fireball. After the dust finally settled, clarity remained. When absolutely all was finally said and entirely done, this remarkable young woman was found standing exactly just where she absolutely always is, She remained firmly planted out on the grueling practice court, relentlessly laboring, steadily rising, and staying beautifully genuine to her absolute core. That is the true magic. Meaning absolutely nobody has to ever invent a fake narrative. Nobody ever has to maliciously make up a wild, fabricated tale about her. If you sincerely think this incredibly powerful, entirely true story touched your heart, the deeply inspiring true story of Alex Eala should absolutely be celebrated. If you are genuinely dedicated to telling the absolute truth, please click that subscribe button right at this very moment. We deeply discuss the hidden tales directly behind the massive drama, the undeniable truth, the actual match scores, and absolutely everything profoundly important missed by the flashy mainstream headlines. We proudly deliver fresh, highly compelling documentary videos each and every single week. Do not ever overlook what incredible, awe-inspiring real-life stories are swiftly arriving next.